I can't imagine why we charge ourselves permit fees.
Yeah, I don't think we,
That's fine. I mean, we did that on the library. I just didn't know if things have changed, you know,
Yep.
and that we can't just take advantage and
I think
waive
we're
them all,
good there.
that's all.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
And consider using the upper level of the former library in lieu of a construction trailer during construction of the new police station.
I move to allow the use of the upper level of the former library in lieu of a construction trailer during the construction of the new police station.
Second.
Discussion.
Similar as when we did with the library, it's just cost savings that we can remove from the general contractor by allowing them to not have to rent a trailer, because they just pass those costs on to us. So if we can set up some plans to use that upper level, you know, we'd have to certainly coordinate that, because we want to separate them from being able to get down to the lower level.
Right.
But we're willing to work, if this is something we can make work, it can probably save us thousands per month.
In the parking too. What's that? In the parking. So we have to stick
True.
a trailer somewhere out there. We're already limited with parking spaces out there. It's gonna be more convenient for everybody trying to get in and out of town
More
hall.
congested.
Employees, especially with a big trailer being somewhere.
Yeah, I've got a couple of points on that I don't know if you've thought of or not. The door separating the upstairs to the offices is not locked, first of all. Second of all, every department has files upstairs, treasurer, board of health, building department, everybody with sensitive information in the files. And if subs are going to be using that, they're going to have access to it, first of all. There's 04 numbers, social security numbers, stuff like that. And if the door is not locked, they're going to have access to the offices downstairs, which again has sensitive information. So just something to think of. First of all, has anybody been up there lately? There's about 6 feet of open space in the center, and then everything, it's quite congested. So it's not just a simple, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that.
I met with Mary last week about it, and she had gone over, and she felt that they could move some of the things that were there, and there'd be adequate space, and that it
Okay.
didn't need to be ADA accessible, because no one would be accessing the site besides persons using,
Subs, sure.
right, because a trailer wouldn't be ADA accessible either, so they felt.
There's
it
a
was
lot of stuff there, so in order to push it in a corner, it's going
Well,
to,
again, it's really just,
Yeah.
it's a request, if it's
I just wanted to make sure
practical.
that
Absolutely,
we're aware of the
Yeah.
vulnerability of all the files.
right.
You know, it's,
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying, Andy. So you're saying that would what you're concerned about be taken care of as long as we have a satisfactorily locking door between the upstairs and the downstairs?
to segregate, first of all, the offices of building,
Right.
conservation,
Sure, from
everybody,
upstairs.
from upstairs, so they wouldn't have access to it. But still, all the files upstairs are not,
Locked.
they're not, the filing cabinets are not lockable. Nobody has any keys, and there is still a lot of pertinent information in there that hasn't been downloaded to electronic files, so it's still,
Yeah.
I mean, it.
So they're in filing cabinets?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
So we could
I
just
didn't
put
know
a
that
hospital
either.
lock on them, couldn't we?
I would
It'd be
imagine
cheaper
there's
than
gotta be some way, but it's just, it's certainly doable. I just wanted to make sure it was, you were aware of it, that's all.
It's got to be cheaper than,
I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
Even 1 month of rent, I mean, if we were talking about 5,000 a month, that 5,000 could probably take care of all those issues, no problem.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was brought to
But
your
it's
attention,
well
that's all.
worth
Thanks for bringing it to
the
our
one-time
attention.
expense.
Yeah,
And then we get cleaned up there.
yeah, that'd be nice, huh?
Pay someone to clean it.
What's a dumpster cost?
Mr. Rudden.
As the town's ADA coordinator, despite what's been Newman said, I'd like to point out, you can make any decisions you want, but that upper floor is not handicapped accessible, and that should be noted. You can override that and do whatever you want, but you need to know it's not. And there's also no bathroom upstairs.
They're also going to be renting a porta-john for the duration for the contractors.
so that'll be outside anyway.
Yeah, not using our facilities.
At the offices over here or on the
Correct.
job site?
Over here, for this location.
Will there be one over here also?
I would assume so,
Oh,
yes.
so,
I hate those things.
Okay.
Hey, listen, the way I look at it is any way that we can save money, and I'd rather spend $10 on a lock and a hasp than $1,000.
absolutely, I
on a
just
trailer.
wanted to make sure
Yeah,
everybody was aware of that, that's all.
Thank you.
So we have a couple of months, obviously, before we need to put this in place, because we won't have a general contractor in place till, you know, the end of the year. Do you want us to work with Kim? Like, just, so we want to make sure we we take care of this because we're the ones making the request.
Yes.
Just to understand what's there, what's needed, and would rather spend a couple of thousand on that than many, many tens of thousands on a trailer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Dumb question. Rather than spend even the money on hasps and locks and whatever, would it be just as smart to spend a little extra on a temp to get those things scanned into the system faster and get them out of there completely?
I think it'd be worth it to spend some of this money on a file system that goes in the basement for when the police move out. That's where the whole
Okay,
idea
that's
is.
another good idea, yeah.
The whole idea eventually was to have the entire basement be just for files. So if we can maybe use some of this funding to get that filing system started down there and find some room to make this work, that would really
I like
actually
that.
fill the bigger goal of what we're trying to do.
You know, it's not that I'm not in favor of that, because I think that's a great idea. But we're also looking at timing and logistics, right? So I don't know how many files are over there. I haven't been over there. But to have somebody actually go down there and do the physical work, I don't know how long that's gonna take and how does that align to what these guys need to do. So a quick fix is, you know, obviously make it so they can start using the space
Yeah, but
whenever they need it, and then work on that piece as well.
I think what Ms. Newman was saying is we're looking at putting some other different type of filing system downstairs anyway. So if we're doing that anyway, that doesn't sound like it would take all that long.
I don't know. I don't
So
know.
I guess it's just a matter of the analysis, you know?
Right, the issue has always been that that location is a temporary holding space for those files until we're able to
The
re-access.
first floor.
Correct, so that, until we could re-access the basement. The issue here is these guys can't go until the station is done, and so we're in a moving game, and we can't use the fire station. So
Right.
it's a question of, can we find another location temporarily to move these files to? Probably is the answer, or can we get them cordoned off in a way that it's not gonna be an issue? I think we can do many different things.
You know, as long as it meets their timeline, if we agree to this
I
and it meets
agree
their
with you.
timeline, then I'm fine with it.
Knowing what the cost would be and where, I mean, I think we can make something work.
Okay.
I think the solution is.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, easement, a butter easement agreement.
Yeah, the only last thing is, we're trying to finalize all of our ZBA requirements, and in order for me to submit the application for the ZBA for the setback, we violate this 20-foot setback on this side of the property. We just want to include the easement document as part of the application. I don't know if that's been signed yet between all parties, and so it's really a request of the status of the easement with the abutter.
So my update yesterday from council on this is that the easement has been approved from her, forwarded, and then she received some correspondence back about an attachment that they were going to provide, and then it could be signed off on. So somewhere, it's past council point
So
for
it's
us.
on the
Yes,
abutter's side, so we should
I
just,
spoke to her yesterday about this, so.
okay, so we'll follow up. I think Chief,
He's following up with his attorney to see what the lax, I called him yesterday. so
okay.
He's also following up to see what the issue is.
So,
Where is it? Yeah.
so is there something for us to decide here, or that's just an update?
It's just an update.
Yeah.
It's just an update. It sounds like we're done on our side, and it's really now in the hands of the abutter. Okay, and the only other thing, just an alert to you, we are on schedule. The subcontract bids coming in this week. The general contractor bids are due 2 weeks from tomorrow, and we'll have the bid opening that day, and we'll have some hopeful,
Sorry, what day is that?
2 weeks from tomorrow. The November 14th is the bid opening for the general contractor. Barring any addenda we have to...
Friday, right?
It's a Wednesday. Barring any addenda we may have to put out and postpone it, you know, a couple of days, but we'll have it in hand in advance of special town meeting. And one last thing, you'll get a correspondence. We're meeting Thursday night. There is a change with our OPM contract. Apparently, our OPM is leaving the company she currently works with. So we received a document, we'll review it this Thursday, of changing the conditions of the OPM contract that we've signed. We may have to get you involved and update the OPM. So what's happening is the current OPM, Mary Bolso, is leaving her company, but they're proposing she takes the project with her to the new company. So we have a document we need to review. We'll have to,
Existing company doesn't mind if it goes to the new company?
there's 2 projects they're letting her take with her. That is correct. Mainly staffing, they couldn't backfill it and stuff, so.
So I'm fine with it.
So we'll provide that to you to review with town council, make sure we're covering everything. We'll get that to you later this week.
There's always a wrinkle, huh?
It's always something, yeah. And we'll be back next time to discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, wait a minute. Just catch up. 3E, discuss Nipmuc water height. Got a letter or an email from Patrice Murphy. Want to come up?
We get that in the email?
Yeah, we did.
Sorry.
Seems like we only talked about this 2 years ago, but thank you for talking about it again.
Sure.
The lake height has gone up, and Joan has started with a petition to conservation.
Concerned citizens that are mainly on Taft, Old Taft, and Uxbridge, a little bit of lower Kinsley Lane, all having problems with high water.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true. So Mike Panko is joining me wearing the Metacomet Land Trust hat. I'm a board member, as is he, but the land that the dams are on is under conservation restriction that's the Meadowbrook Uplands land that we all bought a few years back. So there are 2 dams, and we've discussed this at 2 meetings now with conservation. And there have been some plans to perhaps dredge, perhaps call in Army Corps of Engineers and things like that. But I have gone to the dams, and I had been breaching them from last November when the trapping ran out. Basically, beavers came back. And I breached it all the way through till about August this year, and it kind of got nasty out there, and I stopped. And the water level went up about 7 inches.
Wow.
Yeah. So I know after our first meeting with Conscom, I did go breach again 3 days in a row, brought the water level down 3.5 inches again. So I'm confident that the dams are the obstruction right now. There may be other obstructions.
Right.
But we can control it somewhat by breaching the dams. But I don't want to do this as a volunteer forever.
Right.
And I think if we were to come up with a whole big volunteer plan, I think that puts the town at tremendous risk. I mean, it's nasty to go out there, and you're in like 33-degree water in April, and,
Right.
up to your waist at least. So I don't see it as a viable volunteer effort. The DEP recommends trapping and breaching, alternately trapping when you have to, when the breaching does not work anymore, like you have to go out there daily. If I went out there and breached the significant portions of the dam right now, it would be rebuilt by tomorrow. So it's just how much volume can I get through
Right.
each night.
Mrs. Caldarella, is this related in any way to what you and I talked about the one day out in front here, or is this different?
Well, I'm concerned, I don't know, have you read my letter that I sent to you all?
I haven't read it, I'm sorry.
Well, this is what I sent to Concom, and it goes into, in 1979, the Central Regional Planning Commission had a hearing, and they did some work on the outlet. This is 30 years ago. I just have a feeling that it should be reviewed, the whole outlet. I mean, I know we've had a lot of rain, I know the beavers are busy, but I really feel that something should be done about investigating the whole outlet and seeing why the water keeps coming up. They took out 9 beavers a few years ago. The water didn't go down that much. So, I mean, there is a problem there. It can't keep coming up.
Right.
And right now, it's higher than it's ever been. I have some pictures here of people's land floating, docks floating. And I'm sure septic systems
Exactly.
are floating,
Right.
which is a much
that's-
dire problem than us losing our docks or our stone walls.
Right.
What jurisdiction do we have?
Well, I mean, we can make an effort to have a private company or agency investigate it.
There was two
I
companies.
brought it to, well, through Ms. Newman, I wanted her to coordinate something, because it's kind of interdepartmental. We've got Board of Health issues, there's road problems on Kinsley Lane because water's coming up, so that's kind of highway, so no one really knows what the right height of the water is, and, you know, that could be something the beach or the Parks Department is concerned about or can accurately measure, but it needs to be a coordinated central plan
Right.
rather than some volunteers. We've only really put a Band-Aid on the situation, and that's unfortunate when, when I stopped and it goes up 7 inches, and
Yeah.
Would we be able to use CPA funds to fund it, since it's really?
We investigated that at the Concom meeting, and Ann said no.
That's usually her first response.
I mean, I don't see how you could, but,
not as maintenance, I think, is the issue.
Right,
I don't know.
not as ongoing maintenance.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that is
we,
true, yeah.
right, and we have discussed this since, I think, the first time Mike Callahan, who's the local beaver expert who goes in and puts the beaver deceivers in, this is not a candidate for that because there's no drop in elevation.
But if I understand what you're saying, though, you're not quite 100% certain that that's the only reason why the water's high, right?
Well,
It
right
sounds
now,
like we have to have somebody come in and say, look at the reasons and say, okay, this is what you need to do to get it under control, and then decide what we can do and how much it'll cost, right?
right.
that's what we're hoping.
Yeah.
What I'm struggling with is which department actually manages that, though? Is
Yeah,
that
me too, that's how I
Is that a
asked it.
conservation, does conservation?
Well, years
run that
ago,
process, or-
this Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission got involved with it. I sent them a letter with our petition and our signatures. I haven't heard from them. There was another company, and Dick Grady gave me this information about them coming in, an engineering company, and they put out a pamphlet overall taking care of this outlet, but I haven't heard from them either.
I think one of the things she's referring to is there is actually a height flow device that's a mile away from the outlet on the lake, down on the
They did
intersection
some-
of
they did some work.
Pleasant- Yeah,
Yes.
Pleasant Street and Park Street.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if anyone from Conscom has gone out there yet. I did send them the exact location. The town has an easement to run up there,
I
but
thought, is it like a mini dam or something? Is that what you mean?
it wasn't a height flow. They didn't want to control the height. They wanted the water to flow under because it's farmland, and they used to run a cart through and just stop up. They used to barricade some of the water so that they could pass. So they put in a water passage
Like a
below
culvert or
it.
something.
They specifically didn't want it to be for height control, though. So I don't, maybe that's getting blocked up as well, but you can see the increased flow if I go breach the dams. If you
Yeah,
go
I think
check
it's
from that
further
side.
up than where that flow device is.
Right, I've identified 2 dams, and we didn't remove the dams when we removed the beavers because we didn't want to run the water down too much. I don't know what the right height is. She's saying it didn't come down enough, but we could remove more of the dams. I don't want to drain the
Well,
lake.
we could debate this forever, we're not experts, right? And
Right.
I think neither are you
Right.
people, right? So I think we really gotta get somebody involved that is an expert to look at it and say, this is what you gotta do, which is gonna cost some money. But then the question is, who do we even talk to?
Well, that's
Well,
what we
maybe
have
it's
done over
reaching
a
out.
period of time, is speak with Mike Callahan, who is an expert. We had Rick Merchant come in and do the trapping. So we have had some expert opinions, and that typically is breach, 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 and then trap.
But it sounds like there needs to be some engineering done on.
That's how
you
I
know,
feel too.
Yeah.
What
Something
may be
like-
more than just the beaver issue.
That's what I'm thinking,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I heard a bunch of logistical issues about how high the water, how far do you drain down, how do you keep it up, how much, do you displace that water, where does it go, and who does it impact downstream? Who knows? So obviously we don't want to make a bad decision by just saying, go do this, go open up a dam, and, all right, next thing.
And I don't
we
think
have-
that's
Well,
what
I'm
you're here
thinking
to
we kind of
ask,
need
so.
a.
No, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to figure it out in my own
Right.
mind.
I think we need an urgent resolution
To the
to,
dams and the beavers right
for
now.
now, to let the water down,
I
especially
see,
before
yeah.
winter.
A short-term relief plus a long-term solution.
So, and yes.
I understand. Yeah.
Now, according to my research, in '83, they spent $160,000 on this outlet.
They who?
They who? The legislature donated that to us, or,
Mr. Rudden's nodding violently behind you.
and I think the Army Corps of Engineers went in there and did this work.
Gotcha.
What exactly did they do? Does it say?
Yes, they took out an antiquated, and put in a new channel.
At Pleasanton
Yeah.
Park? Yeah.
There was a drop box culvert at the southerly end of Meadowbrook before the stream reaches Pleasant Street. Due to the strong concerns by the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, at this point delayed writing the permit for the work. But they did get in there eventually and do the work. Now, whether they spent the whole $160,000, I don't know. How do you find that out?
Note to self, man, Mrs. Caldarella does her homework.
Oh, I know. I know.
Well, Dick Grady helped me with the research.
Has have you been in touch with DEP about this?
I haven't.
A
Bill?
bill has been.
Because I think they might be able to come down and look at what's going on. I think that we have multiple issues here in wetlands and in, water contamination through the septic systems. So I feel like they would be concerned and may be able to give some resources and direction.
They may. What was the gist of their recommendations to you? Because we've been doing this breaching under permit, so Bill has been the point person there.
Well, I'm probably not going to add much right now. We talked briefly about setting up a permanent, basically permission instead of doing emergency orders, just to have like a standing permission, for example, for Alan to work on highway issues related to Beaver and for breaching of the dam at Lake Nipmuc, but that's pretty much the extent of it. I won't waste your time going. But we've talked since, these folks have been at conservation meetings about possibly approaching the Army Corps. Not sure what that might yield. State representative, again, not sure what that might yield.
Sounds like just getting to the right person.
But have you had conversations with DEP about what the issues are and what they may be able to help with?
Not in detail, no. I mean, I can, now, obviously, I can and I will approach them about that.
Yeah, I think it's worth bringing that up with them.
Okay, but that's in search of the longer-term solution, right?
I mean, and a short term, I think, because there's a potential
Well,
emergency.
If I understand the short term, you're thinking that if we just get somebody in there to breach these dams, you'll take the pressure off, is that right?
Breaching throughout the winter is going to be really rough. I think we need to breach and trap right now.
Okay, so still, that's still a short term, if, as long as we had money, we could go get done, right? And you're thinking that would make a difference.
Right.
So with that horizon, but Kim, it's too late to put anything on the special town meeting to get funding for it, right?
Correct. Yeah, there isn't, but how are we currently paying for Alan to do the work now?
Right.
Who's paying?
Alan has not been doing,
Trapping season begins November 1st, so.
he hasn't been doing anything
Yet.
not at this particular beaver situation. I did
Okay.
speak with him this morning, and he's getting his own traps, to privately to do it. But it seems that no one does this as a hobby.
Right.
Everyone wants to be paid.
Right, and
Right.
paid per, right,
Paid per beaver, right.
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 I mean, there are so many rules right now. When I first came to the town to ask for money on the town warrant, we thought that one of the neighbors was going to be able to trap, and he's just said that the equipment is too expensive for him to do it as a volunteer.
Well, the board does have money within their own budget. I mean, we have money that's not allocated to anything specific, that is to do projects, and a small amount of money in our operating budget, in which if we had an idea of what the cost could be, we probably could pay for it right out of our current existing operating budget. I mean, that's possible. We could get an idea from Alan how much that would be, but then also finding someone to do the work, right?
Why would we get Alan involved? Why would he?
Because he's
He's a
currently the
licensed
person who
trainer.
does the
Does the
trapping.
He is licensed now.
What, he
He's
does-
a
He is licensed
trapper.
trapping now. He is now, yeah. 2 years ago, we spent $1,500 of town money and about $500 of Lake Nipmuc Association
Right, I'm
money.
thinking it's small money, so even if the bill was $3,000 or $4,000, I'm pretty sure the board could
Right,
handle
so-
that on
okay,
their
so
own.
that's easy.
Right.
We just
And then
get
in Upton, they've used landscapers to remove or breach.
Yes, I'm also on the Conservation Commission Upton, and we've been dealing with beavers for around 10 years at a couple of sensitive locations. And we currently have a line item in our yearly budget, $8,000, and it's shared between the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission. And that has worked well over the years. We've used the funds to pay for trappers, and we use the funds, as you just said, to hire landscapers to remove, either breach the dams or entirely remove a dam in one case. And you have to assume that this is just going to be a persistent problem at this location. There's some locations you can solve the problem with water flow
Devices.
We have some of those installed in Upton, and they've worked very well. But there are other locations where those devices can't be installed, as this is the case here. And you just have to assume that you're going to have to trap them periodically
Right.
and remove the dams, as the need arises. So.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think we should have Kim work on, are you willing to continue to come up with a short-term solution with the town administrator?
Sure.
Yeah, we need a primary contact from the group, sure.
Right. Okay.
You good with that?
Sure.
So I think Bill and I are going to stay in contact. We'll figure out this fast solution. I'm not worried about we'll find the people who do the thing, and we'll get that piece of it done.
Okay.
I think we also need to find out, though, it sounds like we probably need a study, right, about managing the water height and that might be the Army Corps of Engineers. So we should probably go down that path quickly to get an idea of what that would cost and who is responsible for that. I mean,
Yeah,
if it's the
and
town.
if we're going to do that research anyway, maybe that could also include humane duck control. Because there's a number of residents are all worked up about that too, so.
Okay, well, I was thinking more about water flow, but yes, I don't know if the Army Corps of Engineers cares about the ducks, but yes, I get it.
Okay, well, I guess that wouldn't be a humane way with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Correct. Okay, so that's.
Right now, the ducks aren't bad at all, and the geese aren't
Let's find
bad.
some people
We
to
haven't
do
seen
the
hardly any geese this year.
Okay.
That's what we need to do.
No, they're not
Right,
bad this
and-
year.
Because I don't know that
Get it in
Alan
the
even
town
has the
budget.
capacity to do it or the time, so we might need to find someone else to assist with this. That's what I'm more worried about in the short window of time where the weather is still warm enough.
I think he's preparing,
Okay.
purchasing equipment and whatnot. to be able to-
Billy Palmer
Sorry,
said,
Keith.
Billy
To
Palmer
have-
said
to
he'd
ha-
be
to
glad
have at
to
it.
do it too. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, we do have people we would recommend who actually have already been doing breaching, but who would do it that are a landscape company, an insured landscape company.
Excellent.
And that would trap along with Alan. He said he'd be willing to trap along with Alan.
Oh, good.
Says it's a job, though.
All right.
Let's get some kind of contract, though, because we're going to need insurance, right? So let's work on
That's
that
part of the issue,
piece
yeah.
of it. Well,
Yeah.
if they're a private contractor, we're just going to need proof of insurance. They're going to have to, okay. Got it.
Okay.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Those guys get busy, don't they? Those little guys get busy, don't they?
Oh, it's terrible. Brookview Estates, 40B. Someone here to discuss that. Hi.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please come up.
Take notice, it's an updated street.
Utah.
Utah.
Yeah,
It's under correspondence, correct?
yes.
Right.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Dean Harrison. I'm the consultant for the sponsor, Elmeek. Dean Harrison, consultant for Elmeek Construction, the sponsor of the project. I'm here this evening because you had received a project eligibility application, a copy which we had provided to Mass Housing. And I would like to come tonight before you to give you a little explanation of what the project entails, also what the process entails. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, so I apologize if I'm repeating things you already know. Under what is called the comprehensive permit law in the state of Massachusetts, if a town or a city does not have 10% of its housing stock affordable, it has it's a law in place that says that an applicant can submit an application under a 40B, which is basically to be presented to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they review it on behalf of the town, basically for all the boards that the applicant would normally go through in the normal process. The purpose of the comprehensive permit law is to basically give the sponsor or developer an option or a way to offset some local zoning requirements which are considered more restrictive than what was needed to produce the housing. And in Mendon, I looked it up, it's basically right now your what is called the subsidizing housing inventory is roughly around 1.9%. So as part of the process, the overall comprehensive permit process is many steps. The first step in the process is called, where we're at, is called a project eligibility letter. A project eligibility letter is a letter from one of the subsidizing agencies in the state, one of the state agencies or quasi-public agencies, which basically is the golden ticket, as I put it, to get in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And what the process is we submit an application for this project. We submit an application to Mass Housing. Mass Housing then reviews the application. They send a copy to the town, to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen usually has 30 days to basically respond to the request from Mass Housing for the letter. In the letter, in the response, it's usually mostly about whatever the concerns they might have, what they might not have, and so forth. Then the process is if Mass Housing determines, based on the rules and regulations, that the project meets certain requirements, and it believes that the project is economically feasible and fundable, that they will issue the letter of project eligibility. All that does is then gives us the option to submit a comprehensive permit application to the town's Zoning Board of Appeals. And that process is just similar to many of the other applications that goes in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Some towns have certain requirements to submit, other towns do not. If the town does not have certain requirements, we are required to follow the state regulations. The process under the comprehensive permit is regulated in the sense there's certain timelines that has to be met. From a time that the town receives an application to a time the town opens a public hearing to the time they close the public hearing and then render a decision. It's supposed to be an expedited process. A lot of times it does take the good 6 months or so to get through the process. Under the application for the comprehensive permit, the developer is supposed to, or the contractor or sponsor, is supposed to basically outline which of the local bylaws, zoning regulations, subdivision regulations, which they need relief from. You don't get a blanket relief of everything. Some of the common one, obviously, density, multifamily in the single-family zone, some setbacks, size of lots, depending on what the application is. But then, it's like I said, it's not a blanket application for relief. As part of the process, the developer applicant has to meet all state zoning requirements or state permits. So if there's wetlands on the property, they have to follow certain procedures. There's other state licenses or permits they might have to get depending on the size of the permit and such. And then what the applicant does is basically within the comprehensive permit, there's that first piece I would just explain that has certain timeline. And basically the zoning board of appeal is determined that based on those relief that the development could move forward if certain conditions are met. So the board has two options, zoning board of appeal has two options. First option is to deny the application outright. In the past, that used to be done, and then what happens is then that gets appeals to the state, and that the town has to prove why they denied the application, and depending on the percentage of affordability in the community, the state tends to side on the side of the developer, that the housing outweighs the local concerns. Local concern comes down to safety, health safety type issues. It talks about infrastructure, non-infrastructure, and so forth and so on. I won't get into all that tonight. After that process, let's say if the board, what we call locally a friendly 40B, when the ZBA determines that, based on the information they've received, and based on some of the due diligence they do, like a peer review, or they have, their own engineers or their own departments look at the application, and based on that, if they decide it is feasible, they usually write a permit with a lot of conditions. It's a decision with conditions, and the conditions would be, for example, I'm just going to throw something out there because it doesn't relate to the project, but one of the conditions is they need to get a permit for a traffic light from the state. All right. Now, that would be a condition that prior to them, the applicant coming back to the board or back to the building to get building permits, they would have to show they meet all those conditions. So what does the town get out of this? One of the big questions is, is the housing really addressing the concerns of the neighbors, of the community? Does the development itself address concerns of the abutters? And unfortunately for the zoning board of appeals, they have to weigh all these issues and items. It's a tough position to be in. I've never seen anybody come out totally happy out of these procedures. I've been doing this for 30 years in many communities throughout Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So it's a process that would take time to go through. But the board really needs to weigh the housing needs and the housing, affordable housing for the community. And for Mendon, for example, it falls within what is called a MSA, median statistical areas. They put the individual towns and cities into these areas. Mendon falls under the Worcester Easton area. And looking up the incomes and affordable income for people who earn about 80% of area median income, because this specific project will be for individuals who earn no more than 80%. You can't earn $1 over 80%. For one person, they go by family, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. One person would need to can make no more than $50,350. Two-person could make no more than $57,550. Three-person is no more than $64,750. And four-person could make no more than $71,000. Okay, and there's certain requirements that if it gets approved and before they market to the individuals, there's a procedure they have to go through. Usually it's called a lottery, and there's certain, because of fair housing and so forth, there's certain procedures that have to be followed. And one of them is verifying that the income. Now, they do take into consideration certain assets and certain income, but that's a whole nother process.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Is this age restricted?
No, this is not age restricted. Also, under the process, of the ZBA, the local community can do what is called local preference. Local preference in the past was basically the town said we wanted 70% local preference, and it was okay. Now the town has to actually prove that there's a need for the local preference. I would say if you have a housing production plan, most of the time it does address those, and that does basically indicate that you do need a need, so local preference is done. So based on today's incomes, based on the application, because incomes change every year, on the affordable sale price would be roughly $300,000. Well, that's what we're estimating right now, and that's based on an average of 2 persons. You know, it depends on the family size, like I said. If there's 3 in the family, the sale price would be a little different than if it's 1 in the family. So, but that's the average is what we're trying to look at. And then on the market ones, right now, we're pricing them about $450,000.
How many affordable units?
Speaking about this specific proposal that's in front of you tonight, we're having 4 affordable units. It's a total of 16 units, 4 affordable. They will be affordable, and they will have a deed restriction. And what that means is basically if anybody goes to sell the affordable houses, that the next buyer has to meet the same requirements. There's a formula where they can get some equity out of the project, but they really can't sell it for market. And this, once you put this in place, it's supposed to stay in place unless there's foreclosures and such like that. But that's more the legal aspect. So we're proposing a total of 16 units in 8 duplexes located on approximately 22 acres. I don't know, do you have information in front of you, site plan or anything?
No, I haven't seen anything.
No. Did we ever find the file that?
Not get it.
Okay, I apologize then. As part of the process, we had to send a application to the town. We did get a green card. It was delivered to somebody in the, I think, collector's office, and unfortunately it has disappeared. I tried sending a large file, it would not go through. So what I can do is provide new copies to the town. If you would like, other than some general information tonight, I won't continue, since you don't have the information in front of you, it's kind of hard. We could come back, and I can then go through the specific detail of the application.
Sure.
But if you have any general questions about 40B, comprehensive permit, you know, I'd love to address them.
Okay. Any questions?
Not right now, I don't.
Okay, Jean?
Are those properties going to be serviced by town water and septic?
Yes, town water, and the property has septic.
From the town property?
No, it's private septic.
It is private
Not
septic?
sewer, yes. It's going to have its own private septic.
What about water?
Water would be town water.
Town water?
From private, it's private water.
Oh, private water, I'm sorry.
Private.
Private water.
Okay. All right, I think that's it for now, and then if you can get that information to us, and then probably have you come back at some
It's
point.
electronically, if it's too big, can we drop it in a Dropbox or something?
Yeah, whatever, I was going to do that, I could do a flash drive, whatever I can contact you, or you.
I do Dropbox. So
You do Dropbox? Wonderful, okay. Yeah, just, you want to send me a link and I can drop it in there.
All right.
Thank you very much, have a good evening.
Okay, next, electricity aggregation.
I already sent,
Just, I mean, it's been a big issue.
already sent you an email. I thought you might want to read the postcard mailer that's going out, or inform the public just in general of what it says, so they're not surprised to see it when it arrives, or if it hasn't already arrived.
It's already arrived, because I received it already. I received a bunch of them.
There might be some questions regarding it. No.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure I understand what happened.
What happened is when we went back, so our original aggregation agreement ends, it's ending. And we went back out with a group to get rates, new renewal rates at different rates, and all of them came in higher or close to the same as what's projected for National Grid. So with these aggregation programs, really it's a question about whether or not we're willing to take the risk that the amount that we lock into now will actually be lower than what it will be in the future, and we don't know that. So the aggregation company actually recommended that we wait until May. And so what will happen is by default, everyone will go back to National Grid, and they'll see a rate increase because National Grid rates are higher currently. So that will create an impact, which they'll then want to know what happened. And what happened is the aggregation agreement ended. So if we choose to do it again in the future, we'll look at it in May. I know that the Green Energy Coalition that Ann is putting together or working with is also interested in putting numbers before the board to consider in the spring.
If we do it again, will it go to another town vote, or
It doesn't have to go back to town vote.
because the town vote already said that the selectmen have
They give you authorization to enter
authorization
into.
to do it?
Correct. Now, you may want to take it back for a town vote in May, particularly if you're going to consider green options, because they tend to add a couple of cents more to whatever deal that you're potentially in. So if the town decided that collectively they wanted to do Class 2 or 100% green, Massachusetts-based energy, there'd be an impact. So that's
That would
probably
be much more costly
more of
than,
a town decision. But you certainly could make that decision, but you might want to discuss the merits of it on the
Well, the
floor.
only reason I bring it up is I find it phenomenally frustrating myself when I talk to some residents that you try to save them money, and then people get worked up, even though they have the complete power to be either in or out. They get all worked up but the people themselves voted to have this in place, so.
right.
Well, again, there's a few people that are worked up about it, but in my opinion, there's a lot of people that were thrilled about it, and we saved them a ton of money, and it would be, if we could quantify it, it would be awesome, but it'd probably be difficult to quantify how
Yeah.
much money we saved the taxpayers, but we really did. And to your point, Rich, clearly people had the opportunity to opt out. Either way, we have no choice, right? Because we're not gonna put more burden on the taxpayers and charge them more than what National Grid's gonna be charging them. So I would say that if there's a proposal comes back to us that's better than what we can get from National Grid, of course, we're gonna entertain it, and at that point, we can make the decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Discuss assistant assistant position for data listing, data collection. Gonna all come up?
No, they designated me,
Okay.
because I did the research. Just want to catch up on how we got here. As you know, there's an article on the warrant to lower the stipends of the three members of the Board of Assessors. And that's merely a continuation of what we did about 3 years ago. If you remember, we took the three equal salaries and jiggled one up. Now we're flattening them for each members because we've been doing the data collection in town for decades, and as it turns out right now, due to a variety of issues, it's not feasible for the three of us to go keep doing that. So what we looked at was what other towns do, and the options we came up with were most towns either hire a company or they hire a part-time individual. This is a highly trained position, the data collection person. And so what our intention is to do is, starting in January, was to get somebody on board or a company and use the money that's already in the salary account when you lower the remainder of the money to pay people by a parcel for the inspections. And this is where you get your new growth figure every year. This is how you get your assessments. And so in reality, what we asked for is, in conjunction with putting on the warrant, was, we don't know how, if we do hire an individual, to make sure that person gets paid. And that's what we asked for, was some guidance on that. And again, right now, we're either looking at a person or hiring a company that does this.
So, does Gene, do you do any of the data collection? Okay.
Yeah, Gene does all of the entering into the system. There's a lot of drawing the sketches out for the property, entering that into the system and all the data, but what we've done is we've gone out and done the measuring for new construction, stuff, basically stuff that hasn't been taxed yet. So when somebody takes out a building permit, when somebody needs an occupancy permit, along with, we also have to look at every house in town so many years. And we figured a per parcel fee based on what other towns pay in the area would get us up to 280 inspections per year, and the board will do whatever exceeds that. The board will still go on some of these, depending on when they're needed. If for instance, we get told an occupancy permit inspection is needed for somebody to buy a house, that's usually done within a matter of days. And we intend to do that, but it's just, right now, none of the three of us are able at this time to do it with the way it's been done. And I mean, that's just, an outgrowth of the less people.
Could you just remind me that when we bumped up, we zeroed out 2 of the assessors? Is that what it was?
No, we went down to, I think, we went down to $200 and we raised one person up. That person, what we now are proposing for the year is the chair would get 300 and the members 250 each. And for the half year, that would, obviously be half of that for the remaining 6 months of the fiscal year. And the balance in that account, which is already there, be used to fund this person or company. So in other words, no net increase to the town, but the work gets done. And again, if it changes in the future where assessors can do it, we'll do it.
So if we were to hire an outside company, the money we have would be...
We would use that.
We already have the money.
Yeah, we're not asking for any new money whatsoever. It's merely shifting the money to make sure the work gets done the best way possible. And right now, we have 2 options in mind. And I can, explain in detail what they are, but, one of them is the company we already use in the revaluation process when we recertify every 5 years, has expressed an interest in giving us a price on the work. And the other is, there's a person who's done this for many, many years in a neighboring town, would be willing to come in for the 6-month period to complete the training of someone who's been doing the work with Mr. O'Brien under the Veterans Work-Off Program, and then beginning in July, we would offer it to that person, who's a local person.
So you've already identified somebody you think you might like?
Yeah, we researched what other towns did. We actually, as members of the Mass Association of Assessing Officers, I know I've been discussing this, knowing this was going to be cropping up. I've discussed this with towns our size over the last probably 14 months. In particular, this summer when we were at school, I discussed it with many towns. I went out and got job descriptions for data collector that I sort of combined into what we could use here, if we need to advertise it. And obviously, we want to work through whatever the system is. But, under state law, this falls under our jurisdiction, and we wanted to make sure we do it right, not cost any more money, and do it within the proper system of getting somebody paid, if we do with an individual.
And I think we got this is probably one of the best, boards of assessors we've had.
Not that I want to beat our own chests. I will tell you, we were at the fall meeting of the MAAO last Thursday, and we were singled out because our principal assessor is an accredited Massachusetts assessor. Mr. O'Brien is an accredited Massachusetts assessor. I am an accredited Massachusetts assessor. Ms. Edmonds is just starting her courses. Very few towns in the state have the board members accredited.
So the only point I was going to make is, why would we not take their...
I have a number of questions.
Okay.
So, how many of these other towns have their board of assessors doing the data collection?
Very few. Most of them, especially in the smaller towns in western Massachusetts, they contract it out to either the vendor that does their software There are 3 or 4 large vendors in the state that make what's called the CAMA, computer-assisted municipal appraisal software. They hire them out, or they hire professional trained data collectors that a lot of them in the Western Mass, they do multiple towns, because they're lucky if they have, there's some towns out there that might have 1 sale a year.
I'm sorry,
One house sale a year.
Right.
Or, there's no building going on. So most of the smaller towns, most of the larger towns have full-time people who are full-time employees.
Right. So, before the Board of Assessors was doing the job, who was doing the data collection?
The board has always done it throughout history.
Okay.
The problem is the town just keeps getting bigger and bigger,
Right.
and we're getting more and more growth. It's getting impossible for people to do it on a Sunday, or given people's work schedules. It's making it very difficult right now.
So you said 280 inspections per year.
That's if we paid a figure per parcel that we had, after talking to other towns, they told us that's what they pay outside firms.
Okay, how many parcels?
That would be 280 inspections of parcels at $25.
Right, but how many total parcels do we actually have?
About 1,900.
Oh, is it up to that?
Excuse me?
It's up to that. I thought at one point it was like 1650, so it's
Oh, it's up every year.
No, it goes up every year, and in fact, the number of inspections varies. And it's also very intensive at particular times of year. Typically, when you're going for new growth, you are doing most of the data collection in May and June to capture everything by the June 30th date for new growth.
So it's basically a 7-year rotation, it sounds like.
I'm sorry?
A 7-year rotation and assessment.
Well, there's two things you do.
9 years?
9.
Okay.
We do have a 5-year period, but we do 25% of the town each year, and then the 5th year is commercial, industrial, personal property.
Gotcha, okay.
Right.
I was just doing the math. That's-
So, I mean, what we looked at is, we took the 7,800 that's in the salary line item, and we did 800 for board stipends, leaving $7,000. That's 7,000 divided by 25 per parcel. And by the way, per parcel may mean 4 inspections. So we're not, per parcel may mean 4 inspections at the same location.
Okay, gotcha.
For instance, if something's being built over the course of a year, we capture it at June 30th, you're going to go back when it's done. And I can give you a good example of that right now, is the Brazza building on Route 140, came after July 1. They just put the foundation in, they hope to get the building get buttoned up, that will all be new growth, but let's say it comes to July 1 next year and they haven't finished it, that's another inspection. So we allocated a per parcel, not per inspection fee, and that gave 280, which we could have or could not have. If we don't have it, it's not spent. If we have more than that, the board will fill in and do it. I mean, we don't have a choice. And there's, again, so we looked at those options.
So my main concerns would be, I think the benefit of having the Board of Assessors having done it all this time is that they fall under the protections of the town, because as elected officials, you are covered under the same, as if you were employees of the town. If we either need to create a position and hire a person for 9 hours to do this job so that they will be protected. We can't just pay someone per diem, or we should not. They need to be recognized as an employee in some form. Or we hire a contractor that has insurance, and then they're on their own liability, because we've already had incidents where they've gone out and they've had damage to their cars or things. We don't want to put a person in that kind of situation.
And we've all been menaced by those.
I was assuming that one of those two things is what they would do, but it's a good question.
Right.
We have no problem if the company works out best, don't have a problem with that.
Well, I mean, I'd like some time to think about it, I mean, for the budget for next year. I mean, but in the meantime, I think the only option, because we don't have a position that's created, is to contract with someone to do the work, a company that does the work. I don't see how we would,
It's already licensed.
any other way to do that. I mean.
Yeah, I will tell you, the one individual where we're going to use is fully insured. But, and again, the reason why we
Sorry,
talked
Kevin,
about employee.
What was that again?
The one person we had looked at is fully insured on her own. She does do it for another town, but she also carries insurance because she's doing it part-time for several towns. But again, we're asking for your guidance on this. If the guidance is to go through a company, that works fine with us.
Well, if you need an immediate solution, that seems like the easiest one to do, because creating a position requires, comparables against all the other needs and asks of positions in the community. You already have, this just seems an easier, quicker way to go for now. And then we can revisit it for 2020.
That makes sense.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that makes sense to us.
We have enough money in the budget to cover it for the rest of the year?
Well,
It's already in our budget.
because they're going to transfer out of salary
I
lines and
understand
into
that.
contractual in their budget, which is just the,
That's the remainder of what's in the budget?
yes.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, the article calls to lower the stipends to $300 per chairman, $250 for member, beginning January 1st, which means $150 for the chair, $125 each for the members. The balance of that line item is what we would hope to transfer or use to pay if it's a company.
And you feel comfortable that that's enough to pay for that position? For the
We honestly don't know, but we feel it is comfortable. That would be 280 inspections.
Okay.
And again, what our feeling is, if we're getting toward the end of June and we have enough money for 5 and there's 15,
I'm sorry, that's...
we'll go do them.
Yep, okay. Okay, yeah.
So it's really, to alleviate
Yeah.
the amount of work that just is a little over what you're able to do as a board at this moment.
Well, I think it's sort of like a trend mark in society. In the old days, when you had 5 new homes a year,
Yep.
and maybe, 4 building permits for additions, it was very easy for 3 people to go out on the weekend or afternoon and do it. But as we all have full-time jobs, or 2 people have full-time jobs, and, I made no secret I had medical issues, so it's just gotten harder for us to do it. And so what we looked at was, how do we do this where we get the right trained people to go out and do it? This is not, you can take Joe Blow off another department, put them in. These people have to get trained to do this. And, that's what we're looking to do. So, to me, it made sense to do it. If in the future, the situation changed, let's say a new board's in 5 years, they want to go back to inspecting it. You get a young retired person in great health who wants to do it. This can be very easily revisited. We're just making sure the work gets done, because that's what's more important.
If you look at other towns in our similar size, do they have the same number of assessors we have?
Well, most people have more in the office than we do.
Say again?
Most people have more in the office than they do. We have 1 person. Most of them have,
I'm
The
asking
board.
board.
There,
Board of Assessors are generally 3.
it's 3,
No matter what the size?
right. Now, in some larger cities, and I'm stressing the word city, they are appointed by the mayor, but they're full-time.
right, some are appointed.
So if you go to, for instance, Taunton, the 3 assessors do it full-time. So they also hire companies, by the way, in Taunton.
I understand, okay.
We've got a pretty good handle on it. Again, it's just more a question of, we want to make sure we're doing it right within what the town structure does, so we're doing it right.
You're going to need to bring some sort of contract, a recommended contract before the Board of Selectmen to sign at a future meeting.
Okay?
The next meeting of the board is,
I believe the Board of Assessors signed the contract.
Yeah, we do.
it's got to pass first on the 27th, right? We have to move.
Well, we have to go
on.
through town meeting.
Right, so that's got to go first.
Right, but then it is under our purview by state law. And obviously, we'll have, give you the contract review, but,
Right.
and have council review, but the ultimate signing authority is with us. Thank you, Gene.
So
Highways.
the employee itself is...
Right, but if we chose to hire a person,
Yeah,
right, we'll look at it.
okay.
The Board of Assessors would be appointed.
Yeah. But no, we've done a lot of research into this. Even last Thursday, we were at a meeting and we were talking to Upton again, we were talking to, I can't even name all the towns we talked to over the time, but I know I personally, this summer, while at assessor school, I must have talked to 15 towns on what they did, because we knew we were coming up to this.
Talk about it at a future meeting. Tanya has prepared 25 to 30 comparables of communities too. So we'll have data that we can look at, and then we can see what works best for the community. But in 2020, in the meantime, let's solve the problem that we have
Yeah.
right now.
Okay, fine,
Awesome.
so we'll go through the town meeting and then we'll
get something done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, housing production plan update. Hi, Bill.
Good evening again. So, we have talked in the past about housing production plan, and when it came up, there was some comment, about why do we need it, and quite frankly, we did not. So, I'm coming to you now because I think it's almost a given that we should adopt one. And to give you a little context about that, I just want to give you a really brief update on what's been going on with 52 Providence Street and how it relates to the production plan. So, as you know, we had a grant that we just finished up the work on that was performing engineering at the site, soils work, perk testing, etc. We produced a design guidelines brochure, which should be in your packet. I'm really pleased with the way that turned out, and I'm hoping that it's going to be used as a guidance document for not just for this project, but for future housing developments. It pretty much lays out in a qualitative manner, what the town prefers and does not want to see in terms of lots of different aspects of development, stormwater, architecture preferences, lighting, parking, open space, etc. And then the other output of the last grant was a draft for an RFP, which I sent out for legal review. So the most recent news is that we were awarded another grant. Quite frankly, I thought we had no strong argument for the grant until I worked with CMRPC and we developed the argument for it and had consultation with an engineering expert. And we were awarded another $26,000 to perform more site-related work. And the reason that both of those grants are important is because to make these affordable housing projects viable, you really have to do your best to remove as many risk factors for potential RFP bidders and make the RFP look attractive. So pretty pleased about being awarded that grant. Oh, by the way, this second grant will basically take on 3 different tasks that basically get us beyond the first step with DEP for permitting of a public water supply. So that would be a big load off the developer's mind to know, to have assurance that that's already been done and looks good. So as this relates to the housing production plan, I just want to point out what a production plan really is and is not. And I think what is important is what it is not, which is it's not really a commitment on the town's behalf. It doesn't say that you are going to fulfill the plan. It doesn't say how you're going to, or it outlines how you'd like to fulfill the plan. It doesn't say if you're going to do it or when you're going to do it. What it is it documents your options, outlines what you would like to do, and points out the challenges. So before you tonight, there was 3 documents. One, which hopefully is the only one that was really printed, which is just the executive summary. It's about 2 pages. What follows is the entire document, which you may or may not have printed out. It's about 37 pages long. I didn't want to actually have that in front of you necessarily tonight, because what I'm hoping that you'll do is consider, you read that electronically or print it and read it.
You said it.
I did, yeah.
I can come back and answer questions about that or update it. I've recently updated the housing production plan to reflect, what we've actually done. And the reason that I believe it should be adopted right now is because when you have a production plan accepted by the state, and you have permitting of units, then suddenly you have, potentially, you have protection against 40B projects that you find hostile. That doesn't mean I'm against 40B at all. It just means that it gives us more control over our housing destiny. I understand that a lot of the data that's in this plan is getting old. It's already gone to DHCD for a preliminary review, and they basically said, sounds good, send it. I know that when the 2020 census comes out, we're going to need to look at it again. At maximum, it's only good for 5 years anyway, so they're going to have to do it again. But a lot of work has been put into it. It does make sense to adopt it. Beg your pardon? When the federal 2020 census comes out, it'll behoove us to update the production plan. And it only has a shelf life of 5 years anyway. You have to renew it every 5 years, no matter what.
But it's only data points at that point, it's not the whole, it's data points, it's not.
Right.
It's not the entire outline of the plan, it's just
No.
basically just updating the.
No, it just uses the 2010 data.
Yeah.
And in this particular plan that you have, I used the 2010 census, but I also used those community surveys, which are American Community Survey, which is in rolling 5-year periods. And I'll grant you again that that's getting outdated, but nonetheless, everything that's in that document is still relevant. So even though the numbers are a little bit old. To be adopted, it only requires, or to be submitted to DHCD, it only requires adoption by the Board of Selectmen. So my request would just be that you review the entire document, send me comment, questions, and I'll appear before you again and ask that we can have it approved and submitted.
Okay.
Cool. A lot of work's gone into this, Bill.
It has, and it's been a slow process, and quite frankly, I wondered whether this new grant awards is really going to slow things down even more. But actually, I think the benefit of having a more attractive RFP package certainly outweighs that. And one of the requirements in this grant is that all the work is completed in FY19, so there's really no slowdown. I just have one come right upon the heels of the other. So, and we don't necessarily have to wait for the results of the, permitting site exam to be able to issue the RFP.
The total value between the two grants is what? This one was 26, and the other one?
They coincidentally was 26.5. So $53,000 of basically preliminary engineering work that takes it off the developer's plate. Yeah, it works out pretty well. So if you have any questions about the summary or the nature of the document itself, I'd be happy to entertain.
Very good.
I'm good. Is that good tonight?
I think we're good tonight.
Okay. Should I just try to plan to reschedule a time to revisit this with the board, or just wait to hear from the office? I just don't want to sit,
Hear what?
to give you plenty of time to review the entire
We're gonna
document.
review it, and then we have to approve it.
Can you put it on the next agenda, please, Laura, just so it stays in our minds?
Thank
We
you.
can get it done next meeting.
Perfect. I just wanted to say too about the proposal for 22 Dudley. Obviously, even though I don't have any direct involvement with that, I'm certainly going to lend, any help I can to the ZBA and make sure that the town fulfills its commitments, because all the deadlines fall to the ZBA.
Sure. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Discuss Class 2 license bylaw language. I believe, Tim, you're here to talk about that?
Tim and I would love to revisit.
Yeah, right.
Good evening, guys.
How are you?
Girls. So Ms. Newman invited me to review that, the used car Class 2 license definition more than
We have it on as a warrant article.
Okay, so it does have to go to public meeting first, so would we do that before town meeting? Or we have to talk to Bill?
I put it on because we said that we were going to look at it, so, but we need direction as to what they'd like to change it to. So I was hoping that you
So
would provide
Bill
some
couldn't-
options
yeah.
of things that you see,
Yep.
and maybe then we'd have a better idea if we're even changing it or not, or just passing over it.
Well, first of all, what does the board, does the board have any input as far as the description?
They don't like the
You
radius.
just discussed it in length at the last meeting.
Well, last time we talked about, in my opinion, it should clarify that the measurement is taken on the road frontage.
Okay.
You know, it shouldn't be the nearest point in the back of the lot. I mean, that doesn't make sense, you know?
Correct.
So I think we should clarify that.
Okay, so several of, a lot of zoning regulation, they take it from either structure to structure, front, lot line to lot line. Most of them are structure. So if it was, the way ours read is, this particular one, section 10, so no motor vehicle class 2 license shall be within a radius of 1,000 feet from the nearest existing Class 2 licensed premise. So, we could take, we could clarify, make it a little more clarity to it, and we could add, we could say, no motor vehicle Class 2 license shall be, no motor vehicle Class 2 license structure, shall be, we could take out radius of 1,000, we could take out the radius, and we could add structure to it, or, and then just take out the premise and add structure again. That would be door to door. So 1,000 feet door to door is still a pretty big distance. So if you had a parcel with 500 feet of frontage, okay, and four lots down, you have another one with 500 feet of frontage. The structure, the place of business could be to the far end of each parcel. So it would give you a little more room for more business in your business zone too. I mean, 1,000 feet is a long distance. So if you want to keep the 1,000 feet, that's fine. But I think even our town council had mentioned that it should be structured door to door or structure to structure.
Is 1,000 feet typical? It really depends. I mean, is it?
I couldn't find another town that had a distance for Class 2 between each other.
For a distance?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's a commercial zone. You're regulating your own commercial zone.
I hate to controvert whatever the will of the people was when they passed it. I mean, clearly, at least at the time, they didn't want them any closer together than whatever, so if we change it so that they could theoretically be closer together because it's building to building, somebody might stand up and say, well, make the distance longer now. So you've cleared up the language.
Well, it's a public hearing. They have the right to interject.
Well, I mean, the
whatever.
laws change all the time. And,
Right.
Right.
I think you should
it's
be
just
thinking
part of it.
about changing both things and then bringing it to town meeting and see what the opinion is. I mean, to your point, I mean, you don't want to prevent business from occurring, but you want to have some regulations in place. But if what we're doing is abnormal compared to what everyone else is doing, then we probably should not continue to do it. So if we can change it, reduce the distance and how it's measured,
I mean, this bylaw basically
and then it can be
prohibited a
amended.
business from starting in Mendon,
Right.
because I saw a for sale sign there.
Yeah, so
Right.
the other issue you have, so you have this commercial zone, right, and it's only so long. Now, some of the parcels in that commercial zone are only so big.
Right.
So they can't even, some of them can't even do anything.
Right.
So you are limiting, I mean, those are a couple of, well, Chimneys is a big parcel, but then, to exclude all the ones in between because they missed it by 100 feet or something, it doesn't really make too much sense,
You know what, so I like what you just said. My opinion then would be, why don't we propose, have the motion be to just eliminate the bylaw? Get rid of it.
That's
Nobody
another
else is
option.
doing it.
I mean,
Nobody
is
else doing
there
it.
any other
It's not turning out
benefit?
to be a problem.
Well, I think, you know what, probably the idea behind this was probably, they didn't want to see a bunch of used car lots,
Right.
That hasn't happened.
No.
And it's not going to prevent, this town is funded on cars.
It's already the auto mile.
Right, so I don't know why we would be taking a stand on this particular thing, of all things, when that's what people come here for. So it seems a bit,
I'd like to just repeal the thing.
The problem
That's
with
what
this
I don't
one
think
was the
that'll
radius, language. See, it took a radius, so an odd-shaped lot, say a dog-shaped lot, the radius is touching the dog leg, which is touching maybe another lot that's angling toward it, so it's not even taking a measure, it's not fair, because it's not taking a measurement from the commercial zone.
We get that.
So,
So, actually, I have two thoughts on that. So, you brought up the point that we need to have a public hearing. We're certainly not gonna have time for that.
we might,
I
we only
don't-
need 2
I
weeks,
thought-
today's
we
October.
could have one at the next meeting.
Yeah, but
Okay,
we,
okay, okay.
but
We'd have to
we've
have it
never had to do that with general bylaws,
Never had to do what, have it?
have a public meeting, public hearing.
It's zoning
Okay.
bylaw,
Well,
No,
anyway,
this is
the
the
general-
general bylaw.
Yeah,
This is why we're here.
that's why. Okay.
same thing, yeah.
All right.
So,
Okay.
but either
Well,
way,
okay,
we'd still
so
have,
then that kinda-
we'd still have time. I mean, if
well,
we,
I guess the reason why I was going in this direction was if we were to pass over it right now and wait to the annual, what we could do is we could put 2 warrant articles on there. One could be to repeal the entire, bear with me for 1 second. Let me
can't put
finish.
any articles on.
Next
I think-
May.
Listen to me,
Oh.
next May. Let me finish my statement. Next May, we pass over it, this STM. Next May, we put 2 articles on. One to repeal it, which you said you don't think that people would agree with that.
I'd
but-
like to try it.
But we could try it. If it fails, then we could do a second article that doesn't, changes the wording for the distances.
I don't think we
makes it
even,
clear.
I don't even think we need to do that. I think the warrant is going to print in the morning, right? The language of the warrant article says to change the verbiage of the bylaw. I think you can make any number of motions about this on the floor that are related to this, which could include either of these 2 things. I
Including
don't.
get rid of it. I
Right,
thought.
Yeah,
and
you could
I,
delete
cause I,
it.
and
You
I.
could delete it.
Right, because I.
Okay,
right,
if you
and
could
then
do it
just-
that way, that's fair.
Right, and now it's already on, and if it doesn't get deleted, then you still have the ability to modify it when you're
Yeah, that's
there.
fair.
But, you know,
That's fair.
you gotta have a sense of what you want to propose to be modified to. I mean, someone's got to take a position on that. I mean,
No, but that's fair, okay.
I thought it had to be a public hearing with the planning board.
for
Some
general
reason.
bylaw.
Yeah.
This is why we
I-
went
I-
around in a
we've
circle
added
about it.
general
I didn't know it was
It's
that
it's
way.
unusual because it's a general bylaw, but it has to do with zoning, but it's the boards to regulate. It doesn't go
I
to
asked the same
planning.
question
It
last
doesn't go to
week.
planning. So,
So it's a complete oddball, no matter how you look at it.
correct. So,
Yeah, it really sounds like this should be a zoning bylaw, just the way this is.
Well, that's why I refer to it that way.
Right.
Right.
Because it's generally, it's a zoning,
correct,
not a general.
right. So
So, you know.
I would recommend that kind of measurement and a reduction in distance. If other places don't
Lower
have.
than 1,000, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an arbitrary number, and if other places don't have numbers, like,
What's the minimum frontage you can have on a business zone?
Right.
On,
Well, frontage is 200 feet, but,
Even for a business?
no, grandfathered lots are different. It's a whole different thing. So, for commercial, I think it's 100, a minimum of 100 to do something commercial, but it's by special permit because you don't have the land area. So you have to go to ZBA.
All I was thinking is if we're gonna put a number to it and we're gonna measure by frontage, we really should have some kind of logic to it, right? So all I was thinking is maybe we pick a number that prevents it from being any more dense than every other lot.
cannot be immediately adjacent to. I mean, what are we trying to prevent here? I mean, these businesses in general benefit from being right next to each other.
Right.
I mean, that's another part of this.
Competition.
Right.
1,000 feet's too long for this area.
Okay, so what is your spidey sense?
Well, if you
now?
wanted to keep it, I would recommend 500 feet, but I would do it from structure to structure,
Perfect.
Okay.
you know?
So frankly, I'd like to, even if you two don't want to go this direction, I think me as a private person, I think I might make a motion to delete it altogether. But if that fails, then I like what Tim said.
Right. Perfect. Thank you, Tim.
All right, okay, thank you.
Great.
So are we agreeing
Wait,
to
oh,
try to
wait, no,
delete it
Tim,
first?
no, Tim, wait.
I'm
Or is
fine
it
with
on
that.
my- Are we agreeing to try to delete it first?
I mean, I'm in favor of deleting it.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay, so there you go.
Don't worry, this is you too, it's you and me.
We're trying to stimulate business in this community.
Right,
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
like I said, not at our fault, but we lost a potential business.
Speaking of that.
Oh, did I skip a,
No, it's right now, 7. Yep.
oh, I checked it off as if we did it. Okay, go ahead.
So, February, when did they come in? Can't stress this point enough. When did they initially come in?
They who?
Yeah,
The
it was probably.
Katrina
people, the
Thompson.
applicant.
They've, you're talking about the applicants?
Right, so
Yes.
they've requested a refund
Oh, okay.
for some of their costs associated with going through the process here, which I think is entirely fair, considering
Sure.
we did not have a mechanism in place to catch this between January and June, and they continued to go through the process and incur costs related to this, just to find out it was never possible in the first place.
What will that cost?
Oh, I disagree with that. We did have a mechanism.
Not for the up until June part, which is, somewhere when they came in the door in January, Tim, rightfully so, I mean, thought it was zoning, went through a process, and they continued in the process and continued to incur costs, because that's the process they were following. When we got to us, they had already spent X amount of dollars.
I see what you're saying.
And they
Yeah,
never
okay.
would have, it never would have been eligible if we had a system in place where we had something that rang a little, set a
So
bell
what you're
off.
saying is a lot of time went by before the routing slip process.
Correct. I mean, they were in the queue here with us, and we were working with them very positively in a way that they would have had no indication that this was going to be the outcome. They worked with 3 different departments of the town from January to June with the anticipation that they were going to be opening a business. So, whatever their request is,
I
I
move
think
to
it's
approve the
it's
refund
fair.
request for the fees paid by Dan's Auto Body associated with obtaining Class 2 license at 136 Uxbridge Road in the amount of $501.18.
Second,
Further discussion.
these are just the fees that they're requesting the fees.
That they paid us.
It's fees they paid us, it's costs of mailing things, it's costs of having to post the requirements for public
ZBA,
hearing,
yeah.
for ZBA,
Gotcha.
because we put them through the
But it's
process.
all town-related stuff.
Yes, it's all town-related. I think it's a reasonable request.
No attorney's costs or anything like
Right.
that.
For the record, I think the description in this bylaw is still, if I'm gonna measure a radius from a commercial zone, I'm gonna measure it from a commercial zone. I'm not gonna take it from a residential zone. So this has to be changed.
Right.
As soon as we can.
Right.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
Okay. Consider temporary appointment of David Kersey, interim public safety director.
I move to temporarily appoint David Kersey to interim public safety director.
Second,
It's a little redundant, don't you think, Jim? Interim already implies temporary, right?
Well, whatever, we want to make sure.
second,
You want me to talk
Yeah,
about why?
yeah.
So,
I didn't think we were to this point in the decision making. Did I
Well-
miss something?
yes, so here we are. So, Chief Harris, who's done a great job for the town for the many number of months, would like to be able to take some vacation time and go back to his family. So he has submitted an end date of November 8th.
Driven by him.
His decision, he was going on vacation, he's going to Bermuda on the 10th of November and getting on a boat.
Lucky guy.
So, Chief Kessler has been already active with the town, but he is not currently an employee of the town, and therefore, we will have a gap technically in coverage by the person overseeing the department. For liability purposes, I'm recommending that we appoint Chief Kersey just to cover us until Chief Kessler can formally come on board.
Okay.
Does the terminology of public safety director give Chief Kersey the authority
did you want to appoint him acting fire chief? I don't know that he has the wherewithal, but I think,
Well, I'm just questioning the terminologies. If you, I mean,
well, my understanding was there was a reason we picked public safety director the first 2 times around. Seems like the easiest,
And it's established.
right?
And it's just temporary. If it was gonna be longer, then we can
okay.
beat it about, right?
If you want, you know, we could be acting until Chief Kessler gets sworn in on December 3rd.
Acting is good too.
You know, and then boom, it's done with, and it covers us liability-wise.
Acting fire chief? So
Whatever
This
we,
thing.
whatever you would like. I mean, it doesn't matter to me.
Tell me
I
what you
just
want, Mr. Chairman, I'll change the motion.
Well, I just feel like that name doesn't cover what,
I think it does.
Yeah, that's what we've been
Okay.
doing. How would it not?
It's what we, past precedent in this particular community is that is exactly what that job does.
Although,
well, when Dave was acting before, it was, we called it fire chief.
No,
no, we didn't.
No, we did.
We did?
Did,
Yeah, because,
yes, we did.
Okay.
so all the years we had public.
We got rid of our
It doesn't
public
exist
safety
really, because you
director.
have to vote that in, you have to change the bylaw, you have to do a whole bunch of stuff. So we had a public safety director, but it's really, and it was, we had one person that was the fire chief and the police chief.
Right, he was appointed as both, but we called
Yeah,
it
this is-
public safety
so
director.
Chief Kessler's gonna, is moving in.
Right.
But I'm just here to take if something happens administratively, Monday through Friday at
Right.
night,
Right.
if Chief Kessler has something going on in Uxbridge, but then we have a big personnel issue here someone has to deal with, you need a department to deal with it. So it'd be mainly doing the
So
administrative
your
personnel.
recommendation is fire chief as well?
If that's what you think you have to do.
I just feel, I would feel,
For the 3 weeks.
right, but I get that it's just a short time, but I just feel like we need to say what it is so that you have the authority to do, if you need to do something,
Whatever.
you have that. What is, I'd love to know what the concern about that is.
nothing. It's
I
fine.
just feel like
It just-
there's
it just-
something.
I just feel like we're always over
Over what?
compensate. I don't know. We're always.
No, actually,
Overanalyzing, yes.
But you want to know something?
This
I-
just
I
seems
actually,
like an
in this-
easy thing to
In this
do.
case, I definitely hear what Mark's saying, and I agree.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I'll change it.
Yeah, so if
So-
it hits the fan and we get sued, at least.
Right,
I'm
I want to be
acting,
able to
whatever.
say, well, Dave had the power and authority to
So-
say whatever he had to say and do whatever he had to do if that happens. Maybe it won't, maybe you won't even need to deal with anything, but, I mean, who knows?
You never know.
So, I don't anticipate that you're doing this job without compensation. So, I would make a recommendation to the board. Let's see, how many weeks is this? Unless you would like me to negotiate with him on my own, which I would,
I thought that Dave
Well,
would
what
just
is
be a
the-
good
what
guy
was
and
the
fill in
t-
for the next 3 weeks.
that's,
What did you make before when you did it? What was the weekly?
Well, it was 20K a year.
Yeah, we can do whatever the prorated weekly is, that's fine.
Right, wasn't that
it
what
was $20,000 a year divided by the weeks in the year.
52.15.
So,
We can go back and look at it. It was only for a short period, that was 6 months, because a year I did it for nothing.
I don't know what the difference. I just want to make sure when I'm doing my transfers for in a couple of weeks. Times, how many weeks is it?
I don't even know
Is
what
it
I'm signing up for.
5 weeks? I'm just gonna, so
Or?
Chief Harris was making about $1,200 a week. If he were to stay on during that period, for how many weeks?
I'm looking.
I'd say give him half. But that's me.
I'm sorry, I just heard 2 things.
So
Now, you're
I'd
pretty tired. I
say,
had to get off a plane at 1:30 in the morning.
that's, sorry, so how many weeks are we talking about? We're talking about 4 weeks. Harris made $1,200 a week while he was here. He would have made $4,800. I suggest you give Dave half of it. and see if he takes that.
I thought what I heard was is that what Mark had said was, what did he make when he
He did, he
it
made
before?
$385 a week.
$385 a week.
It was like around 4.
So $400, so it's in the same,
It's close to that.
What would you-
I don't know exactly.
Why don't we just prorate the 20,000 like we do them before?
That's where I thought you were going, and then you
well,
went
what he was saying.
this way.
What he was
So-
saying is what it was for an extended period of time, so it was, even though it was, well, I'll let him make his own, we're
Well,
negotiating
it's
our
actually
concession.
You know,
less money for us to
Why don't we
give.
just talk about it in executive session?
Right, that's kind of what.
That's really what you're supposed to talk about.
Well, I was gonna make this motion here. I
Yes.
was gonna make this motion to
Nice.
say,
I didn't realize it was gonna be, yeah.
I was gonna.
I don't have
override
numbers
that.
with me. I don't know what it was. I don't really, doesn't matter, but.
1,200.
Okay.
Half
Can-
of Kessler, half of Harris.
Half of Harris is 2,400. Because he would have made
I
4,800.
tried to make a deal there, Kim.
Oh, sorry, sorry. Sorry.
We'll talk about
Can
an
I-
executive
Can
session.
I tell you what my
Why don't we-
motion was gonna be?
Please.
I don't know, do I want to know?
Maybe you
We're
don't.
gonna have to make a motion, is my point.
Yeah, we need
Go
a
ahead.
motion.
What
right,
does it
basically.
say?
Decide in executive session, because
I
that's really
don't-
when you
I
do this
don't-
stuff.
So why don't you make the motion with me, with the authorization to do contract negotiations with him, and then you'll give me guidelines of what you want, and then we'll do it offline.
That's
right?
great, yeah.
And assuming
Okay.
that I'm within the parameters of what you've negotiated, we'll be good to go.
Okay, so I'll change the end of the motion I wrote down here slightly. So, I move to appoint David Kersey to acting fire chief, effective immediately and continuing until the start date of a new fire chief, at the rate to be negotiated by the town administrator and Chief Kersey.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Great. Discuss Misco Springs.
Did you get all that? Good, I didn't write down the modified part. No. So I don't have, okay.
Misco Springs, Rich, do you have an update?
Well, there's no further update compared to the previous one, right, which was that they agreed to do the phase one.
Environmental.
Right, the phase one environmental. So they're gonna do that, right? So now I think it kind of falls on us to make a decision. Because we have what we need to know, right? Now, do you want to wait till they're done with it to vote on it?
I'm not willing to accept any property until I know what I'm
Okay,
getting
fine.
myself
So
into.
then I'll take the action that I will follow up with Wheeler, right? And see how it's going and when they expect it to be done and tell them we'll vote on it as soon as we know what the result is.
Okay,
Okay?
great.
All right.
Oh, topics not reasonably anticipated. We have consider a request to place signs advertising St. Gabriel's Christmas Fair on town property. Signs to be placed 11/10/18. Fair will be held Saturday, 12/1.
I move to approve the placement of signs advertising St. Gabriel's Christmas Fair on town property at Millville Road and Route 16, Main Street, and Route 16, North Ave, and Northbridge Road, Emerson Street. Maple Street signs will be placed on 11/10/18 and removed 12/2/18. The fair will be held on Sunday, 12/1/18.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
That's the exact same placement they ask for every year, right?
I'm sure it is, yes.
Exactly the same.
Where's my thing here?
Okay.
Okay, I move to enter into executive session under Mass General Law, under Purpose 2 of Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, Mendon Permanent Firefighters Association, Mendon Police Association, Local 188, Mendon Highway, LIUNA, Local 272, Mendon Town Hall Employees, LIUNA, Local 272, Mendon Police Civilian Dispatch, and Fire Chief. And Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, or litigation update. Roll call vote is needed. We will reconvene only to adjourn.
Second, sorry.
Thank you. All in favor?
Schofield, aye.
Burke, aye.
Real aye. Thank you, everyone.
Caught me daydreaming.